Hello, fellow conquerors, and welcome to today's episode of the Tamika L. Herbert Show. If you did not know, this month, October, is Breast Cancer Awareness. 1 in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer. Now, there are organizations throughout the world, not just the United States, throughout the world, who are very unique in how they bring awareness to breast cancer as well as helping those that are affected by breast cancer. Some of those ways include doing plasters of women's breasts. I had the great opportunity to partake in that. Other companies and organizations aid financially when it comes to housing, when it comes to gas, when it comes to lodging. And of course, a lot of organizations host runs, fundraisers, just a variety of different things. It's no different for us as individuals in the ways that we get involved in our own unique way. My guest today is one of those who is involved in her own unique way. Let's welcome to the show, Thalia Williams. Hello.
Hi, Tanika. Thank you so much for inviting me today. This is such a privilege.
Thank you so much. I'm honored that you are utilizing your commodity of time. Time is a commodity, right? And so I honor you for sharing that here with us today to be present. So, yeah. Let's talk about when we first encountered one another. Do you recall when that was? With the million of people you met?
Oh, I hope I don't get this wrong, but maybe at the office? Did you come into the office?
I think it was either the office or there was a community event. They were like, Talia, get in contact with you, Talia. I'm like, okay, well, who is Talia? Y'all, you're saying Talia as though I know who Talia is, but I still just listen to say, okay. But I think it was, I think it was at that event. What was that event? It was
So every year we honor our board and other volunteers, and we do an appreciation event. So that's what that was.
That's what it was. And when she says we are going to let you know and talk about Pink Lemonade Project. That is the organization that Talia works for, and I have the privilege of aiding and assisting and volunteering with them as well. So that's amazing. Yep, that was our first encounter. So in order for our audience to know Talia Williams that's present, take us back to Talia Williams of yesterday. What was your childhood? She said, "Oh, we're going all the way back."
Oh, my goodness. So I self-identify as a military brat, and I'm proud of it. My dad was in the Air Force pretty much all my childhood up until high school. And after high school, he retired. So kind of retired in Arizona. I would say that I'm from Arizona because I lived there 30 plus years. But my heart is also in Europe because my mom is European, and I switched from, let's just say, I started in Germany, and then we went to Michigan, and then we went to England, and then Italy, and then ended up in Arizona and maybe a few other places in between. But yeah, it was pretty remarkable. I got to have, when I went on a field trip, I got to see coliseums and, just amazing, like beautiful churches, and had these experiences as a young kid that I'll never forget. So really, that's kind of my foundation, just kind of switching around, making new friends every couple of years, being in the military. So never really had too much of a problem speaking in public just because I've had to introduce myself so many times. And, that experience is so normal for me. But we ended up settling in Arizona. My dad ended up retiring at Luke Air Force Base. And, I went to a school called Peoria High School and ended up graduating from Arizona State University. And I studied broadcast journalism. My career ended up, definitely changing from what I thought it would be. My sister started working for a nonprofit educating kids about tobacco and doing media for them. So she would have like a newscast, and kids would speak about the dangers of tobacco. And so I was working at a newswire at the time, and I volunteered for her to help her out. And I just kind of really enjoyed it. And I saw a position opened up working for Mesa Public Schools, and as a prevention specialist, essentially teaching kids about tobacco. And I kind of started from there. That was the early 2000s, and then up through my time in Arizona when I left in 2022 to move to Oregon. I all that time I worked in substance use prevention.
Like my go-to place where I will go, I shall be there, and we might have an episode there, is Greece. That's my, I don't know what it is, but that's my place where I want to go. So we got to back up a little bit because you just casually was like, and then I went to Italy, darling, and then I went to Greece, and oh, we came to Michigan, and then I settled in Arizona. No, we need to go back. Like what? Field trips and coliseums. Wait.
Okay. Thank you for slowing me down. I appreciate it. So I will be open with you. This is really my first time sharing my story publicly. So for me, I'm so focused on, our programs, all my former jobs. It was all about the program. So now an opportunity to talk about myself is a little unfamiliar for me. So that's probably why.
It's okay, right? And when we talked offline, which I won't jump too far ahead, we'll get to that. But that was part of the reason I was so intrigued because I'm like, whoa, this lady has a story that will resonate with somebody and they need to hear it, right? What you even saying being a military brat. I didn't say it. She said I didn't call her brat. She said it. But just even that. So yeah, talk about that experience in, yeah. Do you realize you were, yeah, talk about that.
Well, it's kind of, all I knew at the time, but I just really loved just being in Europe and my mom being from Croatia. That's her background. I got to be near my family. I got to see my grandma while she was still alive, have cousins, and actually see more extended family. Whereas in America, it's just my immediate family that I'm in contact with. So yeah, so that was really special. I When I travel now, I always try to go back to those places. Like England is very special for me. I have family, I have friends there, so I try to go there as often as possible. It's been since 2019 that I've been in Europe, so I'm overdue for a trip there. But what more would you like to know about my experience, I guess?
Like, I mean, that's good. If there was something that was just so memorable that really stands out, because you just said you still have family there, right? And so that sometimes when people travel, they have to figure out where I'm going to stay, who I'm going to connect with. But the fact that you have family abroad like that, yeah, talk about that a little bit. Like, what does that feel like? You being here, that they're there. Are you close? Do you stay in communication with them?
So I stay in communication with some of my family abroad. In fact, my cousin Una and her husband are coming to visit in Oregon in a couple weeks and staying with me and my boyfriend Jesse for about 6 days. And I haven't seen her in about 17 years in person. So we communicate pretty regularly on Facebook video or whatever that's called. And she's exactly 10 years younger than me, born on the same day. Uh, so May 21st, and my boyfriend has the same birthday also. I know, it's kind of weird. Yeah. So, yeah, I'd say I probably keep touch using Facebook a lot, and that's probably my chief mode of staying in touch with my friends and family. But I think because I haven't had more than immediate family in Arizona, having my network of friends has been so important.
You went to Arizona State? Is that what you said? Okay. And tell us about those college years.
Well, I would say Arizona State University, it's a good school. It's kind of got that party school reputation, which I mean, I can see why. It is a fun school, and there were a lot of parties, and people had a good time. I did have some fun, of course, but also, I really at the time thought journalism was what I wanted to study because in high school I thought, oh, I'm going to be a radio DJ. little did I know about how things would change. And yes, there are still radio DJs, but maybe the opportunities are not so great anymore. I mean, in college, I had an internship, for a radio station, splicing film or like audio reels together. Those skills, when it became not valuable very soon after that, when everything kind of turned, editing was all on Avid, and so that kind of became outdated, but it's kind of cool. And I got to meet Walter Cronkite, which was really amazing because I volunteered or I interned at that radio station on campus. So that was a really cool experience.
You said a DJ, so I'm trying to envision the type of DJ where we gonna have, let's see, let's go, where we gonna have some Linkin Park or some Pink or some Boys to Men or Creed, or was it, wait, 69 boy?
Okay, so think a little bit more alternative than that, because in high school, I wore a lot of interesting clothing, like a lot of velvets, a lot of purples and blacks, and I might have dyed my hair super blue black so that it shone blue, and combat boots and things like that. So I was more into like the alternative. I went through a metal phase, but that wasn't my big thing. I really like maybe like bands like The Cure and just, Smashing Pumpkins and all that stuff.
You could teach me about Smashing Pumpkins or The Cure. We're not talking about breast cancer. The Cure.
Oh, just The Cure. Yeah, just a British English classic alternative band and everything in between.
Let's look that up. I don't know about that one. Okay. So journalism, DJ, didn't quite work out.
Well, no, I just, sometimes you just have a change of heart in life. And it didn't feel right for me because I kind of switched over from radio thinking TV, but maybe I had a perception that is incorrect. But at the time I thought, well, if I want to work my way up through all the different affiliates, and get to where I could be like a Phoenix reporter or something, I just had this idea that I'd probably have to stab backs along the way and be kind of like in it for me only. And I just don't have that personality. I'll be real with you. It is not like I am not that kind of person. And not that there's anything wrong. And people that work in those fields are not all like that. But I think that somehow along the line, I just was like, I can't do that. I want to work for something that has more of a purpose. And so nonprofits just kind of stole my heart. And I started, just really like loving working with kids and just really liked what I did. And tobacco is something that I've always thought was harmful. My mom used to smoke. And when I was a kid, I implemented my own media campaign in the household because I created a poster about her, showing her, probably stick figures, I'm going to, be honest, in the hospital, like with an oxygen tank, and posted it on the fridge. And I'm like, Mom, this is what's going to happen to you if you don't quit. And I swear to you, she quit. She did. I don't know if it was just that, but so in the 80s, so more research was coming out about how harmful tobacco was. Many years, years before that, people would actually think it's healthy for you, or they think it was totally fine. And that's really when all the messaging started coming out.
Yes.
Yeah. So I kind of jumped on that bandwagon, tried to take things in my own hands, and my mom quit. So
talk about an impact and utilizing your voice even at that time, right, to make an impact in your immediate community. That's good. So health was something that you saw was important. I think we kind of briefly mentioned and talk about that as far as, health and just some of the similarities. Over 17 years you worked with youth. I worked with youth for over 17 years. I don't know if you knew it, but the household that I grew up in, my grandmother who raised us, she smoked. And I recall, as I reflect back, just the effects that it can definitely have on you, right? With your clothing, with your health, and it being Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Like, there are so many components and things that does impact us, right? We know secondhand smoke it affects us as well. Can't say that my grandmother stopped before she deceased, but we all have reasons for things it is that we do. No shade to anybody. We all have vices. Every single last one of them. Even those of us who don't realize it and we're in denial, which was me at one point in time, but we all have vices, right? So, okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. Now, you said for over 17 years, you worked in nonprofit organizations. Tell us about that span, who you worked with, what that looked like.
Yeah. So starting out, I would go into, so this would have been like 2003-ish. I would go directly into classrooms and teach youth. I would bring in a pig lung and kind of you inflate it to show the damage, and they had discoloration of what a pig, a tobacco lung would look like. So, of course, there was Mr. Gross Mouth, a teeth model to show people or show the kids the damage on the teeth. But then also there was a cigarette machine where you actually go outside, light a cigarette on the school campus, and show how much tar is in one cigarette, which is wild now to think that I was able to ever bring cigarettes on a school campus. But this was, early 2000s, different time. They stopped doing that a long time ago. So it kind of went from that. And then that grant ended. So that was my first experience of learning how sometimes grants stop getting funding. And so I moved on to another organization called Touchstone Behavioral Health at the time. I think they're Touchstone Health Services now. And I was there for 10 and a half years.
Yeah, youth still.
So a combination. So when I first started, I worked with youth directly. And then I went from prevention specialist to team lead to coordinator. And so kind of my roles changed. I became more of a supervisor position, and I started writing grants. And when we also started educating on alcohol. So our focus was less on tobacco, more on alcohol, because in the grant world, it's kind of like what the substance of the day is kind of thing. And so alcohol was our huge focus. I also did a lot of coalition work and worked with other agencies and started attending a lot of like prevention groups, that were coalitions, and we'd all kind of come together. We try to get policy changes, things like that.
Okay. Yeah. So before we get to Thalia today, there's a pattern that I'm seeing. You have a servant's heart, right?
I think so.
And listen, no, I'm hearing, and again, we haven't had a lot of in-depth conversation, but just us connecting, seeing each other at events and things. But what I'm hearing is you have a servant's heart, and you have been about prevention. You have been about, it might be in different genres, in different ways, but that is a servant's heart.
The first time I ever heard the term servant leader was my mentor, Burnham Howell, who was my supervisor at Touchstone for 10 and a half years. And to this day, he's like such an important person in my life. And, every time I would switch to another position, we would talk and he would give me guidance. And yeah, he was just amazing. So, yeah. And, he even taught like a course on servant leadership. So he kind of, I always resonated with that because it's like, yes, I'm here to guide, but I'm also here to do the work. And it's like, not just delegate. It's like, I'm happy to do the works. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's because when we all come to realize in the different areas that we have in politics, in the educational system, if we get to the core in having a servant's heart, because that requires us to be very humble and to abolish the pride that we have. And just imagine when that's reciprocated, when we're trying to outserve one another, right? Then that really it makes stuff flow so much more efficiently and effectively. And that's what I hear in you. Like, you have a servant's heart. You big about prevention and aiding in different areas, right? And just being able to work with kids. Let's go back so we can go to a little bit Thalia today. Let's talk about our journeys as it comes to our maintenance and our health, right? Is mom, we're not doing this anymore. Within the family besides mom, what about yourself? Are there any health challenges that you found, and what did you find, and what did that look like in you navigating those waters?
So I really didn't have any health challenges that I really identified until around the age of 30. I was getting my annual exam, and I guess it was the PA probably. She noticed a lump in my breast. And so that was probably, I think it was the age of my first mammogram. And it was just determined to be a cyst, and so nothing that. But it was just kind of like, oh, that's interesting, you know.
You said you were 30.
Around 30, yeah.
Around 30, okay.
And so I hadn't really thought about, I mean, the breast cancer would have been the very last thing I was thinking about. And at the time, it was determined not to be breast cancer at all. And so it was just like, okay, well, you're going to have to get fairly regular mammograms. I think they had told me just to get them every few years at that point because I was still so young. It wasn't at the point where they said to get them every year. And then so that really kind of followed until I was closer to 40, really. And then it was like, well, there are some calcifications, but it's still determined not to be breast cancer. And so at around 41, I also went and got my annual exam. And so, they do all the things. But at the time, I kind of had I'd say kind of a negative experience with the doctor. And she was an actual doctor. And that, I know our medical professionals do the best they can, but they don't have a lot of time because they have so many patients. But it was more of an impression that I left feeling a little bit body shamed, I guess is how to say it, because I, in years previous had gained some weight, and there wasn't really a conversation of, well, what's changed in your life? Getting older is part of it, blah, blah, blah. But it was more of like, well, just lose weight and, blah, blah, blah. And it just felt very, it just didn't give me a good impression. And at the time I was also informed because of my breasts that I needed to get a mammogram every year. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So I it's pertinent for us to talk about that, right? And to ensure people don't feel alone. Because first of all, you said you started in your 30s, your early 30s, right? Getting your mammograms.
Yeah.
And so every year they were telling you to get it done. First, before we go, what was your thought process? And just like,
I really didn't think about breast cancer because the word cyst sounded, I think I had looked it up at the time and thought, oh, cysts are normal, breast cysts are normal. Breast cancer is not. Yeah, I actually don't have a family history of breast cancer. And I think I placed a lot of assumptions on that fact, which now knowing that it's only 15% of people that have a family history, so I didn't know that at the time. And it just wasn't something I ever was really on my radar. I didn't really think about breast cancer at that time.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you're getting the mammograms every year. You're like, oh, cyst, okay, it's normal. Not even thinking about breast cancer. And then there comes a time, and me as a minority, when you were traumatized.
So I would rate it as mildly traumatized. However, still, I did feel it wasn't, I think there's just some assumptions being made, and it wasn't like, you start thinking, oh, you're just eating too much or something, but there were other factors. There was no there's a lot of assumptions. And so it just put me off. I didn't want to go to the doctor, and I didn't go for 3 years. And so in those 3 years, things changed, obviously, in my breast, because the next time I got a mammogram, which would have been 2020, 2020 of August, which I just at that point was like, it's been a long time. And since I had been told that I needed to get a mammogram, and I was getting notifications I need to get a mammogram every year, and I ignored it. I was like, I just swallowed my pride or whatever it was and just decided to get one. And thankfully I did, because that's when we discovered that the lump in my breast was ductal carcinoma in situ, or DCIS. And so, it's
what that means. What does
yeah.
that mean
So
for those that are listening?
So essentially, it's your cancer is trapped in the duct, and it hasn't become invasive yet. But further testing showed that I was actually grade 3. So grade 1 and 2, they might have told me to just watch it. We're going to monitor it carefully. But grade 3, since at any moment could become invasive, and then that spreads outside the duct, which is when, you would need even more severe treatment. They decided to proceed with surgery to remove it, as well as radiation. but not chemotherapy. So essentially, I was very lucky, to catch it when it did, and it could have been invasive any time, but I did manage, to get it before it became invasive. So that prevention again kind of saved the day, even though I wish I would have gone earlier, just to.
Right, right. But that was I think we have to normalize a couple of things. The medical system, those who work in the system, just like any other system, are human. Just as human as we are, they have lives outside of their profession. They're managing their families. They're managing all different types of things, right? And like you said earlier, they do the best that they can. But it's pertinent for those that are watching and listening in the medical profession, as well as that woman or that man that may have had an experience that put them off, to say, hey, okay, they could be having whatever is going on in their lives. Maybe that's not the one. Let me pivot and maybe go to someone else, but still making sure the prevention, and we're doing those things that they recommend to us the best that they can to ensure that we're just managing and taking care of ourselves, right? I think that's very pertinent to make sure that that's talked about and that that's put out there on the table again. So at this time, you said in 2020 is when you went back.
Is when I decided, it's been too long. So, I mean, every state's different, but in Arizona, there were periods of time when you could get still things like mammograms when it wasn't all closed off. I think it was depending on the rates of the pandemic going on. And also, I mean, I'm sure they prioritized me because I should have had a mammogram sooner. And so I think that helped. My medical records is probably why I was able to get one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did that process look like? Because I'm going back to the pandemic, and I'm working in the medical field and a very pertinent working in oncology, and remembering the guidelines and the restrictions of people not being able to come. Did you experience that? Like, what was that like? Were you able to have your family there for support, or your significant other? Like, what were your thoughts and emotions and processing? Oh, well, we need to do further, assuming you had to go and do further. Yeah, what was that like?
I I think there were a few instances where, I mean, I brought my boyfriend, but he waited in the car because he wasn't able to sit in the office. I mean, the biopsy part, a little scary, right? Big needle, you lay down on your stomach and they poke you from up. Very strange and surreal because, of course, and also after that, thinking, oh, it's probably nothing. But then they come in the room and tell you otherwise. And you're like, oh, so you're still processing like cancer, you'll not even. No. Up until the point of the biopsy, I still honestly just thought, oh, I've been told for all these years they're just cysts. And it was. You hear it, it is, but also, I think along the way, I've always recognized how very lucky I am to have caught it so early. Like, always. Yeah. That's always been in my mind.
Yeah, definitely. So you're in the office alone by yourself. Ditto here, and it was before the pandemic, but that was pride. We'll talk about that another time. And what does that journey? Was that after the biopsy? You had to do your follow-up appointment? Was it telehealth? Did you have someone there for you? Take us to when it moved from, oh, it's just cyst, and no, this is actually cancer.
So I don't think I had any telehealth. I think all my appointments were in person, and I had to go to my surgeon's office. I think because it was for the times when I just had like consulting with the doctor or the surgeon, I didn't bring anyone as a support. But of course, on my surgery, so the procedure, the biopsy, and all that happened in August, and then my surgery happened in October 2020. And I definitely, my boyfriend was a big support for me and was there for me. And yeah, I think in that case, he was able to sit outside. Of course, everyone was masked.
Right.
But yeah.
Wow. So it was like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, they got me in fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And you said something very pertinent earlier. No history.
No, no breast cancer history. My dad has had prostate cancer, but not, yeah, as far as males or females in my family, no history of breast cancer that I'm aware of course. I will say I don't know all of my family on my dad's side, father and all that. So that could be there. So
Because that was my story too. And I think we kind of mentioned it, like prostate is linked, breast cancer is linked to prostate cancer. So, because a couple of years before my diagnosis, my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer. Then a couple of years afterwards, then that's what, yeah, transpired and happened. So, wow, no history in the family that you know of. None of that transpires. And yet they say you have breast cancer and you're in Arizona
I'm in Arizona.
in the midst of the pandemic.
Yep. And I was very lucky that my insurance covered genetic testing and I didn't have any genes at all. Yeah. So that was another.
No genetic mutations, no history. Father has prostate. We know that's linked. Most of your no medical issues the majority of your life when they started to cyst, but yet you're diagnosed with breast cancer.
Yes.
Not a smoker,
Not a smoker. Oh, no, definitely not. No.
none of that, but yet you're diagnosed with breast cancer. So take us through that journey of I'm going through radiation treatment and what. Well, first take us to the journey because you're thinking the C cyst. You ain't even thinking about the other C cancer. What does that transition look like between cyst and cancer for you?
So, it obviously caused a lot of stress in my life. So I was working full time for another behavioral health company, but as a director of the prevention programs. At that point, when I left Touchstone Behavioral Health, I started working as a director for drugfreeazkids.org. That company just dissolved and got absorbed by Southwest Behavioral Health several years later. But I was working full time and then I took on a side gig on weekends. So I was working every day of the week and I just wanted extra money. I know, crazy. But, and I worked for that company for about a year and a half. And then I found out about my diagnosis and that was the first to go. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to take care of myself. I am working way too much. And what is it all for?
How many people, I think, especially women, not saying it doesn't happen with men, but we take on this just throughout the years, me talking to different people and doing my own reflection. I definitely talk about it in my book. We got to be strong. We got to do this. We got to do that. We're in go, 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 go mode. I mean, we live in a microwave society, so it's ingrained to us to continually go until something comes to a screeching halt. And it was your diagnosis for you. Wow.
But at the time, my organization had transitioned to working at home, so I was very lucky to be able to work from home. And then when the radiation came up in December, I was able to adjust my schedule to fit in appointments either early morning or afternoon. But it was 20 sessions spread over 4 weeks, and right in smack in the middle of Christmas. So that was probably one of the most surreal experiences I've had, laying on the table and hoping that, the radiation itself doesn't cause cancer.
That was over the holiday. That can be kind of.
Yeah, you start thinking all these thoughts, but also, I was getting a lot of support from friends and family. The one thing I didn't know at the time, that there were organizations like the one I work for today that help people. That it was completely out of my radar. I did get like a folder after I got diagnosed, but it was more of just like explaining what was happening to me and just like the pertinent contact information. But it wasn't like a list of places places I could go or who to reach out to get support.
Was there anything?
Not unless I'm totally off base, I don't remember seeing any of that.
Wow. That's interesting. Well, very, very ecstatic you had a great support system there for you, right? Like that's a phenomenal thing, and you allowed people to be able to be that support. Did you really allow them to be that support?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, especially once I got my weekends back and I could actually do fun things again.
So tell us a little bit about that period of going through radiation? Because when you're having treatment and you're used to doing certain things, you can't necessarily always do everything that we do. Or if we do it, we're doing it and we're not necessarily supposed to. I know that was my story. Did you have any experience like that as you look back in hindsight?
Not so much. I feel like that's another area I was really lucky because I didn't really feel too tired or any. Yeah, it was very strange. Like I didn't have very much fatigue. Yeah, and the only thing I remember is that, and this could have been a result of my surgery because they removed about 4 centimeters from my breast tissue. Is my arm, having limited mobility, and so at the time, pandemic, everyone was doing yoga with Adrienne, so I just kind of started doing that, and it really helped. And I did a lot of home workouts at the time, and I think that helped with mobility and just like almost like your own physical therapy.
Right. Okay. So you're in Arizona. It's in the midst of the pandemic. You've completed all of your treatments.
Yep.
What transpired that brought about, besides the cancer, or if it was the cancer, was there anything else that transpired? Because you're here in Oregon with me. So you're not in Arizona. You're getting treatment in the midst of the pandemic. And I definitely remember all of that in the midst of the pandemic. What did a cancer diagnosis do for you? And did it do something for your family too? Like, how did that shift mindsets and perspectives?
I mean, I really do think that it could have been a result of the diagnosis, but a lot of it had to do with the pandemic. It's like the mentality that life is short and that you just need to do what you want to do because the reason we ended up in Oregon was because my family in the year 2001, we took a family trip to the Portland area, well, Eugene as well. And we just kind of fell in love with it. And we said, I distinctly remember, we said, we're going to move here. Did we think it would take us 20? Yeah. Did we think it would take 20 years? No. But my sister kind of was the person that kind of forced the issue. She just was, I think she was just so sick of Arizona and the heat. And she's like, we're moving. And then my mom and dad followed suit because they weren't going to leave their grandkids. And then me and Jesse decided, it's time for us too. And so we were fortunate because the housing market was strong. So we were able to sell our collective houses and/or because I had a condo. And that helped us get here. So my family moved in 2021 in the fall, and then Jesse and I moved the following spring. 2022.
So it is. Did you get a little weepy? That's okay. And it's because this is a very, it's an emotion. Like to say, you're not used to talking about yours. Oh, no. So first of all, I commend you and honor you for doing that, right? Because you recognize obviously that there's something you have to say someone needs to hear. And I told you that and I was adamant about that. So again, I honor and thank you for doing that. You leave the pandemic, the diagnosis, the entire family transitions and comes here. 17 years working in nonprofit. You're used to working with youth or kids. And now you're here. And what is this job market looking like after the pandemic? Oh, what am I going to do?
Funny that you say that because my old Pilates teacher, who's German, gave me a harsh talking to when she heard that I was moving and didn't have a job lined up. She's like, oh no, you can't do that. She lectured me and it was just like, okay, Patty, I know that I am moving to the land of nonprofits and I will be fine. I have had 17 years experience and I will be okay. And sure enough, sometimes you have to have faith in yourself, you know? So yeah, sometimes you have to have faith in yourself and know that you will. Exactly.
Care about you.
Yeah.
Are sitting there looking out for you in your best cases. But you knew and had faith in yourself.
I also needed a break because I had worked nonstop pretty much with the exception of a few vacations here and there. You take a week, two off, but then you're out of town or whatever, and you need a vacation from your vacation. So I hadn't had that ever in my like career. So I consciously, and because I was fortunate to have family living here, we decided pack up our stuff, put it in storage, and then just take our amazing cats and ourselves and whatever we could fit in our car and on top of the car, drive it, to Portland and take a couple months off and just enjoy the Pacific Northwest that we love so much. We had traveled a few times, of course, since 2001 to the area. So I already knew some of the things going on and yeah, I'd already been to certain places, but yeah, just needed a couple months. And then I was like, okay, I will look for a job. And then I stumbled upon somehow Pink Lemonade Project. And, you know, they're looking for a program director in the field of breast cancer. And I just was like, wait a second. It really just, yeah, total light bulb. I had never thought, even based on my experience, that I'd be connected to breast cancer, probably thinking that you would have had to have a medical background, which I do not. So it was really, to me, just a great twist of fate, or however you want to look at it.
Yeah. So as you look back, was it your own, because it is a unique experience, the years that you work for nonprofits, right, in the different genre, then you're going through your own breast cancer journey, you relocate, I don't have a job, I'm just going to chill. There's a nonprofit and it happens to be in breast cancer. Tell how your experience, or did your experience make you just feel like you knew that was it and I'm not looking any further? That was like play.
Yeah. I mean, of course, I had a few other interviews and a few other, just because like you can't put all your eggs in one basket. But I really had hoped that that's the one that I would get. And so, yeah. And, during the interview process, I did share my story. So that's really the first time I spoke, I guess, somewhat publicly. And, that's still came saddled with, well, is it enough of a story? Is it like, because that's probably when my whole little bit of imposter syndrome or survivor's guilt or whatever it is, a mixture of both, kind of came into play. And then when I started with the organization, I mean, I've met incredible people like you, but I've also met people that have struggled and have had a lot more pain, a lot more suffering than myself. And so, thinking, well, I don't have that experience, so maybe mine isn't as valuable. But I feel like I've shifted that perspective over the last year or so.
A process, right? Because what you just talked about, survivor's remorse is so real, especially if you work in that environment, because it's like, why am I still here and they're not? And something that I learned, and I'll share that with you, I'll share it with our audience, because anything that we go through that's hardship or traumatic, survivor's remorse can present itself. In the midst of writing my book, I realized, and I came across this quote by Bill Gates, I believe it is, and he said, comparing yourself to someone else's life is simply insulting yourself. And so it just made me reconfigure how I was looking at who am I to compare, myself to anybody else. Like they lived and did everything or what. So even if they're not, I'm taking their baton and I'm still marching with it. Right. So I totally understand that. And what you're saying, imposter syndrome, how many people don't go through that?
Well, so now that I've been with the organization for over 2 years, I've heard so many different kinds of stories, and there's even people that have had less treatment that I've received, and so that doesn't make them any less. Their story is no less valuable, and things can change in the blink of an eye, sadly. So it's about 20 to 30% of those that get early breast cancer later. There's the experience of reoccurrence. So I'm not out of the woods yet. I can't make any assumptions about myself or anyone else. And so once you've been diagnosed, you'll always have that fear. You always have some anxiety going on, when you get you do other mammograms or other follow-up visits. So it's always in your head. It's like this thing that's in your head. Yeah, I never want to make anyone else feel less value just because I initially struggled with that. I do think I've moved past that by now.
But it's important for us to talk about that reality, because I think that's something, not think, I know it's something that's not talked about on a large scale, because it's like, how dare you, this is how I felt. How dare you even have the nerve to say you feel remorseful, sorry that you're here while other people are grieving their lost ones. But it doesn't take away from anybody's story, and that's part of what this show is about, because everybody's story is valuable. Everybody's story gives hope. It exudes love, and it can bring forth liberation in the area we feel so confined or bound in and think no one else can identify with, right? So I think that that's just, it's so pertinent for us to be able to share that and talk about it. And like you said, you've now been with the organization for 2 years, and you've heard just a plethora of different
So many things. But I'll never hear everything because, again, everybody's story is different. So, but I just met so many amazing people that inspire me all the time. And so it's just really cool.
Yeah. Wow. So in the midst of working here with the organization, how did it really start to shift your, because you said your mindset began to shift about your own journey, right? And your own diagnosis, pardon me. Was there any particular thing, or just the fact you were in the midst and just exposed to so many people and seeing so many, because you hear breast cancer, there's so many different facets. So what was that like?
I think that's a big part of it, just being exposed to so many different people, but also just learning more and more about how important it is early detection and prevention. It's like, okay, there is some prevention that goes on because you can prevent your breast cancer from becoming, you know, later stage if you catch it early. So then, the self exams, going beyond that, if there's any changes whatsoever, whether it's pain, dimpling, puckering, you know, uh, discharge, anything like that. Some of those symptoms though are typically associated with later stage, but there are still some things that you can look for with your breasts. So just if you notice any changes whatsoever, you need to talk to your medical professional. Exactly. And then also being aware of your family history, and is it in your family? Because there's still a risk associated, but just knowing your body and how you're feeling, and just not being afraid to, if you have any questions, getting some guidance, because fear, I feel like, keeps people away from the doctor's office.
And you know what fear is? I learned this. It's false evidence appearing real. Right? It doesn't mean that it's not there, but just be fearful, but advocate for yourself, because there's so much that can be changed, so much that can, like you said, be prevented. In being that advocate for ourselves, and just that early detection and all of that is so pertinent.
Yeah. So I think just the exposure to learning more about breast cancer in general makes me realize that my experience is absolutely valid, and that it does need to be shared, and people need to hear about those that have gotten DCIS stage 0, and you hear about later stages. But actually, in my opinion, you don't hear about stage 4 enough. You don't hear about people living with metastatic breast cancer. And some of the most amazing people I've met through this position are people living with stage 4, and just how talk about like giving, and like people that want to give back to their community. I mean, absolutely amazing.
So tell them, for those that are listening and they're not cognizant of the difference between your diagnosis when you said 0 and then with metastatic, can you share that with everybody? What does that mean?
Yeah, so with stage 0, essentially it's a trapped cancer, and it hasn't spread outside. And so even though it is technically cancer, you're not going to have as severe health impacts as somebody that's with more advanced cancers. So cancer stages are 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. By the time you get to stage 4, your cancer has basically spread outside and impacts other organs. And so, and everyone again is different. Some people it might spread to their bones, some people their brain, um, blood. It really just depends. But yeah, so with reoccurrence chance, I just have to look myself. I still have to make sure that my cancer doesn't come back or a new cancer develop. And so, they're not just going to mammogram the breast that got the cancer. They're going to look at both. And I still have to get, see my oncologist every year. At least so far, that's what I've been instructed. Um, would I feel better about getting an MRI every year? Yes, but that is one thing. I know I told you that my insurance doesn't think my risk is high enough to give me an MRI every year, um, which is interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's something I could probably pay for on my own. But it's also important to consider breast tissue density. And I think my breasts are less dense than they used to be. And so that means essentially if your breasts are more fatty, less dense, they can see more clearly, which might be a reason why they don't want to give me an MRI because they can see it better. Those with dense breast tissue should be very, very diligent about, not only checking their breasts, but getting their mammograms because it is very hard to see. And if they can get MRIs, that's even better because then they can really see if there's anything.
So there's pertinence in what she's saying. Know the type of breast that you have, whether your breasts are dense or they're not dense. Talk to your PCP, talk to somebody. That's very pertinent to know so that when you get to that age where they say this is the age you should start mammograms, then you're like, let me advocate. I probably need this type as opposed to that type of mammography.
Age of age 40, except for those with a family history, those have, like myself that had the lump and any changes, any pain, anything like that. So
tell us a little bit of what this Pink Lemonade project do. Talk a little bit. Oh, she lit up. I love it. I know. It's just like, go on, tell us what a little give us some information about Pink Lemonade Project and what they do.
Yeah. So we are a nonprofit, and our organization was founded in 2010. So next year will be 15 years, which is amazing. And so our organization was founded by two doctors, essentially, anesthesiologist and his wife, or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I messed that up. A plastic surgeon and his anesthesiologist wife, Dr. Gabriel, Alan and Cassie Gabriel. So they really started the organization because there just was not a lot of support for the breast cancer patients that were facing surgery, so plastic reconstructive surgery. And one of the first programs that happened at Pink Lemonade Project was our retreats. And they're like weekend retreats at the Gorge and an area in Corbett, Oregon. And it's really beautiful. And to this day, we still maintain our retreats. We do less of them now because we have so many other programs, but the retreats are still a program. And then they kind of decided on, bringing in peer mentorship where we match people based on their age, their stage, their diagnosis. Still such a wonderful program. To this day, we have about 35 mentors. And we have mentors that speak Spanish and Ukrainian as well, of course, English.
That's so beautiful. She did say they speak what?
And we have a Ukrainian speaking mentor as well.
Beautiful, because it's just not anyone. Yeah, breast cancer has no specific group that it goes after, right? Everybody is subject to it. I love that fact. Yeah, let's bring in because it affects everybody.
So I'm kind of blending the past and now the present when I'm saying how many mentors we have. But just kind of to show that to this day, we still have retreats, we still have mentorship. We also, I think the online support groups were started a little earlier on as well. And we have 5 different types of online support groups. We have 2 that are peer-led. And one of those groups called Zest is actually kind of intended for people diagnosed at an earlier age. And then the other is a general women's breast cancer group. And then we have 3 support groups led by licensed clinical social workers. One of them is a Spanish-speaking group. And then the other 2, one of them is for women with advanced women's cancers, and that's led by Legacy. But anyone can attend. You don't have to be a patient with Legacy. And then Compass is a women's cancer group that also is open to anybody that has, women's cancer.
Yes. And these are held online, like some monthly. So even if you're not in the Oregon area, you can still join and we will have that information for everyone as well. That is amazing. Talia, yeah.
Well, wonderful. Thank you. So then in 2021, as you're well aware of, as I know you volunteered for Susan Komen, and they used to have a local affiliate that served Oregon and Southwest Washington. And I think they made the decision nationwide to close their local affiliates. And then the Peak Made Project was approached to kind of keep going two of the programs, and one of them being our treatment access program, which is a financial assistance, and it helps get people in more rural areas connected. You know, they get mileage, they get lodging and food when they're traveling more than 25 miles each way to treatment. So it's a very important program. So that's how we were able to serve all of Oregon as well as Southwest Washington through that TAP program.
I think for people to understand the pertinence of that, right? I recently heard a story somebody was sharing with me, and this was back in the 60s or something like that, where someone, because they lived in a rural area, had to drive over 5 miles to get treatment. And they were like so done. And luckily they knew someone close by and they were able to stay with them. So just
50 miles or 5 miles?
over over 5 hours.
5 hours. Okay.
Excuse me, over 5 hours to get treatment.
That is so.
So when you're talking about rural areas, we're thinking about the people that live and they have maybe one stoplight. I remember that in the South. Like it's outside the scope of the city, and there's a program that provides assistance, so they don't have to worry about. Is that what you're telling me, Talia? They don't have to worry about. Oh my gosh, I got to worry about my health, and then I got to worry about, oh, where's the money going to come from? Where am I going to stay? How am I going?
So yeah, our financial assistance programs are around because people, they're already having so much to stress about, and that those added costs can really stack up. And so yeah, traveling to treatment costs money. It's not for free. And so anything we can do to help. So that we're very fortunate to be able to take on that program, but also the metastatic breast cancer. At the time, it was called Dinner Series. And so today it's just our Living with NBC programs. And really, our financial assistance is incorporated, retreats, support groups, all of that, and additional events for our NBC community is all included in that. And it's a unique community, and they want to be connected with each other. They may not, the survivorship, the pink ribbon may not resonate with someone living with metastatic breast cancer. If you're told that if your cancer is terminal, you're not necessarily going to feel like a survivor. But there's people with NBC are living longer and longer. It really just depends on how your body responds to treatment. And just having that network of people is so important. So, again, I love our NBC programs, and I think that they're of great value for that community.
Definitely. And I think it's pertinent for, like, because you said their voices to be heard, because there is such a profound difference, right? As you stated, when it comes, I have a breast cancer diagnosis and I have metastatic.
Yeah, there's a newsletter so we actually work with the advisory council, and it's all women with metastatic cancer, and they write a wonderful newsletter every quarter. It's called Quarterly Quench. And you can find it on our website as well under our Living with NBC section. But yeah, so they write articles from the heart. They do, or they may just want to research a certain topic and provide more information. They might just provide a list of resources that helps those with NBC. I mean, the content is really, really great. And I feel like every newsletter gets better and better. We actually started a Living with NBC fund to raise money specifically for our NBC programming too last year. One of the council members proposed that to our fundraising team. And so she got that started. Yeah, it's just, it's really, really cool. So we do more financial assistance besides TAP too. We do have one that's more focused in on the Portland Metro, Southwest Oregon area. And that's more of a fund for those that are not necessarily traveling for treatment, but they still are struggling in some way. So they might have problems, paying their utility bills or getting a special bra or food. And so it's called Pink Practicalities. And Pink Practicalities, yeah. So essentially, with all our financial assistance programs, the provider will apply on behalf of the patient. The patient fills out a release of information form, but and we know we get it processed within 6 to 8 weeks, and we send checks. Um, yeah, so it's assistance for those who are in treatment. So whether they are going through chemotherapy or surgery or radiation, and it's money when they kind of need it the most.
Yeah. And that's why it's so pertinent for us because the statistics say 1 in 8 women. Here, there we go. You already knew where I was going. You already knew where I was going. But here in the area we reside in, it's 1 in 7. So think about how many women you come across daily. But if we're here in this area, it's 1 in 7. I mean, and we're just two right here who can definitely, attest to that. But it's so pertinent for us to just when we can give of ourselves, even if it's just $1 here, there's no amount that is insufficient, right? Very pertinent for that. And with your own unique experience, it has propelled you. This is what I say, Talia. What was meant for my demise and destruction simply catapulted me towards my destiny.
No, that's beautiful.
That, right? Think about your journey, what we did. Like both of us, we said for over 17 years. And I still have a passion for youth. Like that's still one of and the things that we did in our life, but it has positioned us to where we are right now. And I I love what I do. I've had a servant's heart like you, but just the connection and the people I've met with Pink Lemonade Project. You've only been here 2 years, and there's just a sense of community that I may have never met people if it wasn't for cancer. And when you are experiencing and going through things that may not necessarily have anything to do with cancer, you may be done with your treatment, but the community that you build when you are in need, I am speaking from a recent experience this year. When I was, whew, but because of my community and the people that I met, I didn't have to worry about being homeless. I had somewhere to be because of a cancer diagnosis. So it is so pertinent, a lot of times, and that was my story. I wasn't going to tell anybody. I found it on my own, so I'm going to handle all of this on my own. And this isn't a diagnosis. This isn't something for us to experience and go through by ourselves. It's too weighty to carry that boulder ourselves, right? So I would implore anybody who may be experiencing any type of cancer diagnosis, breast cancer diagnosis, if you feel as though I'm just going to handle and take care of it on my own, the community that you build it's like none other. And they're just friendships that you forge and connections that stay with you. Right? I would petition anybody if you find yourself in that situation to reach out. You have community. You have my information. And we're going to share Pink Lemonade Project's information as well. Wow, this has been see, you made me. That's why we have tear ducts. So that's why we have tear ducts, right? But we don't want all the snot to come out. That would not be pretty for everybody. But before we get ready to wrap things up, I want to know if by some odd chance no one remembers anything it is that we said, right? What would be the one takeaway you would want them to have?
Yeah. So, I mean, all this goes back to getting yourself screened, checking your breasts, not being afraid to report anything, even if you think, oh, I'm just imagining it, or if it's just, probably nothing. Just check it out. Just get it checked out because you just never know. It's one of those things. So yeah, that's going to be my message, and that's when people come to, like, if I'm at a health fair, I just make sure I get that message across. And so
That's the takeaway. I love it. And how would they get in contact with you or Pink Lemonade Project if they want any information? How can they reach you?
So you can email me at thalia@pinklemonadeproject.org. That's my work email, but it's a great way to reach me. You can go to pinklemonadeproject.org too and check out Get Help. And then we have information about all our different programs. Our event calendar is up to date as well. If you want to learn about like what we have going on, because it changes all the time. We do a lot of fun things too. We have like crafts and, wellness activities, all kinds, from hanging out with llamas to making a wreath for the holidays to pumpkin decorating and everything in between. So we're always open for ideas. And we get a lot of feedback from surveys that we hand out to the community about ideas of what people want. So yeah, guides our programs.
Socials, are you on any social?
Yeah, so Pink Lemonade Project is on Facebook and Instagram. I think you just look up Pink Lemonade Projects, essentially.
But I think I know you sharing your story, your journey has resonated with someone. Conservati is signed to your voice. The way I say it is not going to resonate, but the way you say it is going to resonate more profoundly, right? And vice versa. So thank you so much for sharing your unique story. Thanks for introducing some and reintroducing to others who Pink Lemonade Project is, what they're all about. And thank you for sharing your commodity of time.
Oh, thank you, Tamika. This has been really wonderful, and I appreciate you so much.
And for my fellow conquerors out there, remember, for the month of October, you can go to my website, TamikaLHerberts.com, to obtain your hard copy of what? Conquer the Fight of Life. 30% of the proceeds will benefit Pink Lemonade Project. So 1 in 8 women and men get breast cancer too. Consider gifting someone with a copy of this book, and Pink Lemonade Project will receive 30% of the revenue generated for the month of October. Until next time, fellow conquerors, remember to bring hope, agape, liberation, one story at a time.